from the web application, right? A software engineer has built a web application, right? So there's a back end, there's a front end. So we, the customers, we interact with the front end, right? While the back end is where most of the magic happens. So whenever information are being sent, we have what we call a connection string that sends data to Azure PostgreSQL database. So we're using the Azure PostgreSQL database. So we're trying to use all the components that was actually suggested in for the competition, right? So the database we're using is actually a flexible database, right? We're not using an instance, we're using a flexible database server for Azure Postgres. So we have a connection string. So the connection string basically comprises of both the host name, username, and the rest. So the way the solution works is we're trying to do like a real-time CDC approach for database. So what happened now is we have an application, right? An application from here sends data to Postgres, Azure PostgreSQL database, right? And at the same time, we've also set up what we call Debezium. So Debezium is an open source CDC data capture that works between database and Kafka. Because why are we using Debezium? Because we can send data from a database to Kafka topics directly. Because Kafka topics has to be two types. It has to be serialized and it also has to be a JSON or Avro format. So what we use now, we use Debezium, which is an open source CDC approach. So what we basically did, we connected Debezium to the Postgres database. That's the Azure Postgres database. So what's going to happen now is as soon as the data are being inserted into the database, which is on Postgres, right? Change data captures those changes real time and sends it to Kafka topics, right? So when it gets to Kafka topics, so we're using the Docker, we're containerizing everything in Docker, we're using the local, our local machine, right? It's actually hosted in a virtual environment, a Windows virtual environment. So as soon as the data gets to Kafka topic, right? So we have two consumers, right? So we have one consumer that sends the data to Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is more like it's a vector database. It's a open source vector database that usually stored that helps for reading data faster. So we're using an Elasticsearch, right? So we're inserting those data real time into Elasticsearch. Then we have Kibana for visualization. So this part is actually done. This is more of the engineering part, right? Because we want to see what we're visualizing, we want to see what kind of data is entering into our database, right? So we have a Python script that picks those data from the Kafka topics and inserts it real time into Elasticsearch index. So you can also Elasticsearch index, Elasticsearch index is just like our Cosmos DB, right? So you just have like you create your index, you send your data into it. So it's just like Cosmos DB, just like MongoDB, any kind of database. But this I'm using Elasticsearch, right? Database, which is inside of Docker, and also have Kibana, which is for my visualization. So this is basically how the whole core engineering part works, right?